Welcome, guys. We're going to wait 1 or 2 more minutes, as always, for people to trickle in, and then we can get started. Hope you're all doing all right. All right, we're gonna wait 1 more minute, and then we start. All right, everybody. Welcome to the weekly dev call on Matchbox. In case there are some people here who are here for the first time, this is basically a way for us to catch up on our grantees' progress, update each other, discuss different issues, different approaches, help each other out. That's what this call is all about. And today on the agenda we have 4 points. First, we have a small update on the .NET SDK project by Tom Rocks. Then we have an update on the game clock by II Captain. Then we have an update on the music tools by Casey. And in the end, we will be getting an introduction to the guild system that Subsam is building. So, without further ado, I think we can get right into it. Tom Rocks, if you're here and ready, can you give us a brief update on the .NET SDK?
You hear me well? I'll share you my screen a little bit.
Sure.
All right, hope you see it.
Yes, we can see it.
So, still really early in the progress of this project. Right now, the focus is to build a .NET package, some kind of library that we would use in the future for the .NET SDK to build on top of it. So current status, we're following a bit the architecture that .NET JavaScript library has. So a provider, here's my interface, a provider containing some properties like the base URL, the feeder gateway, the gateways, and then all its methods to communicate with the chain. I'm still really early in that blockchain space, still a bit confused on that huge system and how it's communicating and stuff. But yeah, this is working. I can show you how I implemented the methods. Also C#, I mean, it's really simple language. I feel like really easy to read. We can keep the code quite clean. I'll show you how I'm mapping the JSONs to my models here. I mean, I'm not doing anything actually. C# is doing it by itself. I just need to like create a model for it, telling what kind of properties it has, and the whole mapping is done by itself. So really easy in .NET to do this. But yeah, my provider is basically an HTTP client, which is making some calls. I have some little bit of logic I can show you to build the URLs. I mean, there is that URI object in C# again, which makes this really simple. Everything is task, so if someone want to build on top of it, it can be all coded asynchronously. What else have I been checking out? So yeah, next step, I'm looking into all the actions that post something on chain. So I guess the contract deployment, calling some methods on contract, I guess, making transactions. So that's what I'll be looking at now. Also, we're thinking about integration tests for the project. For now, I have this simple console app, which is building a provider with, and I'm giving it an HTTP client, and I'm just calling the different methods to see if everything works. Ideally, we want this to be automated and just run on each time we publish a new version of the package. But yeah, right now I'm at a point where I'm trying to finalize that library, making sure it will have the requirements I need for the SDK. But also I'm at that point where I'm not sure how this SDK will actually look like. So few people sent some resources on other SDKs existing on blockchain. But yeah, still really early in investigating this. Yeah, I mean, if someone has any questions, I can try to answer. But yeah, that's basically the current progress of the .NET project.
So, thank you. And I have a question on a high level, just for the people who are new to this kind of .NET SDK stuff.
Mhm.
What exactly is the library you're building right now?
So, I mean, I'm comparing it a lot to the JavaScript library that exists for StarkNet, right? It's that tool which is communicating with the StarkNet provider, and so getting data from it. And yeah, through that data, I mean, what else can I add on this? I mean, did I answer this question? I'm not sure I did.
It's fine. I think I think I get it. In terms of so there's someone who wrote in the .NET SDK channel, by the way, who might want to help out. He's a senior dev, I think, for .NET.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so maybe you guys can collaborate even, because I think you said yourself you're still pretty new to blockchain stuff. So if he can help you out a bit with that, I think that would be very productive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wanted to also get the opinion of Seko. I saw he exchanged some messages with him quickly. But yeah, it would be nice to have more people working on this, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's see how we can make you guys collaborate. Definitely keen on that.
I have a little question.
Yep.
Hey, Thomas. So, just in order for me to be able to explain it to others, what will be the first things that will be possible when that will be ready for both, .NET developers and both for Kyle developers?
Okay. So I feel like this library, right? When I'll be done with it, if I understand how StarkNet works, so there is those sequencers and validators. Um, I feel like we can develop based on this library anything on top of this which would be linked to the StarkNet ecosystem. But maybe I'm completely wrong and I don't understand the full picture yet.
So the way I would describe this project to non-technical people is that with this library, especially game developers can build real games using a real game engine like Unity, and so the quality of certain games will go up by a lot.
And what is the main reason that right now they can't? Because
Just
it's hard to
Unity.
connect the front end of Unity.
No, so Unity 3D is a game engine that uses C# to write the game. All libraries now that are available for StarNet are either Python or JavaScript, which cannot be used in Unity. So now, if you're building a game on StarNet, you can only really build a simple browser game, right? So it has to be in the browser, built in JavaScript. If you want to build a mobile game with Unity, so you have high quality assets, high quality effects and everything, you cannot do that now. But after we get the .NET SDK, you will be able to integrate the .NET SDK into your high quality, very polished game.
Amazing. Okay, thank you.
So that's kind of a Cairo or JavaScript to Unity transpiler, effectively.
No, it's much more simple. Just a way to get data from the blockchain and send transactions to the blockchain.
I see.
Yeah, so the contract will still be in Cairo.
Yeah, I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
I think this is really great progress, Tom Rocks. Thanks for pushing on this. One suggestion that I think is worth considering is the StarkNet provider gateway API is not a formal specification, and like moving forward, eventually it's kind of like a short-term solution, and longer-term solution is going to be interacting with the StarkNet blockchain through the JSON RPC interface. And so StarkNet they maintain like an official definition of that specification that teams like Pathfinder and Juno are implementing. So I think for future compatibility, it would make a lot of sense to conform like the provider interface to the JSON RPC interface, and then just like marshal the provider responses into that shape, which is kind of the approach that we've been taking for the Go SDK. So in the future, we don't have to introduce backwards incompatible changes when we migrate to the official specification.
They make more sense to have like, we could have like, just what I was thinking to do is that we have the provider, which really is the gateway, and then we would have like a RPC provider or something else for the JSON RPC. Just they really do different things.
Well, eventually, from my understanding, from speaking with the Starkboard team, like the goal is to fully migrate off of provider onto the RPCs, and so the RPC.
Yeah. So maybe we should just call one gateway and the other RPC provider, and then we start with the gateway, and then when we use a migration, we just hold both for a while until we create the gateway.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely one approach.
Yeah, we need to find the name. Basically, I think we should have I think this is slightly different from, say, Ether, in that the provider also send transaction to ask people to sign the transaction. And so.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like you're saying, okay, like the JavaScript. Well, I think the provider on the JavaScript side, like there's the signer interface, which is, anyways, we don't have to get off track.
Yeah, account interface, a bit confusing. So I think we should just have our gateway and in the future RPC like client or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, I shared the official specification. Something that we've been doing with the Go SDK is basically to make the types conform to the JSON types, and then just modifying like the return types from the provider. So people that are using the library in the future, it's like easier to migrate to the JSON RPC. But yeah,
yeah, that's something we should consider. That's it. A good point, actually.
Cool. Otherwise, I'm super excited for the .NET SDK.
All right. Do we have more questions for the .NET people? If not, then we're going to move on to the update on the game clock by II Captain. Are you ready?
Yeah. Hello everyone. And yeah, so first I will just introduce my projects to people who don't know about it. And so Game Club game we I'm just building a something like Gelato where smart contract automation takes place, but it so it's a layer above Yagi to make Yagi more simpler and execute that. So right now the update has right now I split it in milestones, and my there are a couple of issues that I would like to discuss with the community. The first issue is that I need to have some sort of whitelisting via secret key, and I figured out like there are three ways I can do that. One is that the owner itself of the contract sends a random string in the function, and then it generates the secret key, which can be sent for whitelisting an NFT contract. The other way is to use a timestamp, but again, that's a very deterministic way. Uh, the third way is like to use something like in Chainlink random VRF Oracle, but I couldn't find that. There's a group that's working on that. But the easiest thing that I could think of was to that the smart contract owner only goes ahead and sends a random string, and that generates a secret key. So that's what I have implemented for over here. But I think the better way would be to have some sort of oracle where the random number is generated. And there is a group that's working on that. Maybe I can take help from them. Uh, the other thing is that right now, in the milestone one, I basically did a struct of array, which is not the most ideal way, and it's memory consuming and computationally consuming, and even storage wise, it's intensive for scalability. So I'm still like figuring out what to use in an ideal case scenario. But yeah, that's my update on that. And yeah, yeah, I think that's about it.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have any questions for this? In terms of next steps for Game Clock, how long do you think is it going to take to complete the project from here?
I think 2 more weeks would be sufficient for this project to be completed. Yeah, that's about it. And yeah, so once the whitelisting is figured out, the only thing that remains is how, like, there are four functions that need to be written, which is schedule, unschedule, fund, and unfund. So the idea is to, yeah, schedule a smart contract function to run at specific intervals on top of Yagi, and unschedule it, and then have that. Put it in an AVL tree or a priority queue according to the order when they are going to be executed. And then there would be fund and unfund, which would basically be right now there is no gas fees. So, like the project can go live without that as well, but fund and unfund would basically be funding the gas fees that would be required to run these automations on a recurring basis.
Right, yeah, makes sense. The kind of gas fee system is still an issue for many projects, right? Still waiting on Starcred to push that out properly. But yeah, thank you so much for the update. Appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing that completed in 2 weeks. Awesome stuff. Next up, we have an update on the music tools by Casey. Casey, are you here?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Last couple of weeks I was identifying things, that users and devs and game communities, want first out of this audio engine, and distilled that down into a chiptunes, SID chip type player that takes in MIDI input, so users can start to contribute, and games could incorporate this. And so what that's kind of entailed first is building out a MIDI player, and so that's what I've been working on. Loading, parsing the MIDI files, and sorting all the tracks out. And all the different file types, and so getting that sorting logic and that that loop setup that's structured in a way where I can kind of modulate that loop in real time as things are happening. And so that's that sort of handling the song management is that first kind of chunk that I've been taking on. And the sort of other component to that is the sounds being played. And there's the synthesis route or the sample player route, and I'm initially going the sample player route because it can encompass all of those kind of both the earlier audio engines, like the NES, the SID chip, the AY, as well as the sort of like Sega style Mega Drive kind of tones, and even the sort of more memory based ones. And so basically, there's going to be this component where I'm replacing kind of the standard crappy sound fonts with these new sound fonts that reflect that kind of the different eras of of the sounds that we're of the games that we're used to. So I've been building out, I've got some sample banks and oscillators and things like that I'll be sampling that sound really good and appropriate for this. So that's going to once I've got those sort of sound fonts kind of set up basically like sample packs, then one of the things that I'm working towards is using a test case of an old game. And since I've got all of the sound effects and music from Mega Man 2, and I also really like that score, and there's like quite a bit of events happening, and so it'll sort of like be a good test case to basically start to build out how strong the making sure all the MIDI messages are being sent, and translating like pitch bends to the sample player and that kind of a thing. And so I've that will be kind of like the way that I sort of test and kind of build out the sort of logic, because that Mega Man 2 has a lot of different scenes with different music and scene specific effects. And so this will kind of be the way that I can test out the sort of management of the sort of, I guess, that intermediary between the game logic and the player as well. But right now I'm still sorting out the player and MIDI management and stuff like that. But that's sort of the rough arc of where things are at now.
So a couple questions here. The player doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the logic part, right? It's just for managing the kind of different sounds and songs and stuff like that.
Exactly, just reading in the MIDI data, which is how people are one, how like if you go on vgmusic.com, like, and there's thousands of these music cues, that's kind of how they're managed. And so I imagine that there's new contributors that they'll MIDI will be the most portable format that they'll use, but this is just managing that that base kind of musical player layer.
And so if I understood correctly, you're going to use Mega Man 2 basically as a test for your logic. And so I remember, if I recall correctly, last week you or 2 weeks ago you talked about these kind of two different approaches between the two different languages, I think it was.
Yeah.
Have you decided for one of them, or what's the status on that?
Yeah. I'm just going for as like vanilla JavaScript as possible at first, and then but to kind of a previous point, it's likely that this player would have to be broken out into different, like if it was going to be used on a different engine, like you'd need C# or something like that, and to parse and play the MIDI files that way. But that's the way I'm starting, as opposed to like some really small, kind of language that people might be harder to integrate. So yeah, I'm going with the kind of the most basic versions possible.
And so for the logic that you're going to test on Mega Man, am I correct in my assumption that your approach is going to be basically to test this off-chain in JavaScript, and then basically once you feel like you have a robust system, you're going to try it out on-chain in Cairo.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know how like a player would work on Cairo, but I think I just don't know that would like. Do you mean like making calls to Starknet that, as far as like pulling like MIDI files off of there, or like licenses for generative models, or what specific Starknet interaction were you kind of referring to?
I'm not necessarily talking about a player, just basically on the whole picture, like the kind of logic part where you read the state of a game or the front end, and then basically decides based on some kind of algorithm, okay, this sound has got to play now, or this sound has to play now, like that kind of
Right.
kind of part.
Right. Yeah, that that part is I've got to figure that sort of management out, and I'll be looking at sort of how games have sorted that out in the past as a sort of like as a queue.
All right. Yeah, super interesting. So basically your next steps are going to be to try this out with Mega Man 2 and see how your kind of logic holds up.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Can I just jump in to say something, which is Casey's going to be doing the next Twitter Spaces, which is next Wednesday, I think we said, Casey.
That's right.
So if it's great to, I've heard you talk about it a couple of times now. I think it's a super interesting topic. Developing, I guess, we need to work on the language, but developing on-chain music and sound effects for on-chain games. If there's anyone here, just keep an eye out for it, because we'll be obviously sort of like booking it into the diary next week. But if there's anyone here who perhaps feels that their project is something that could fit into this kind of conversation with Casey, maybe there's sort of where we can package that up together. So just drop me a message or say something now.
Awesome. Thank you for the reminder. So definitely do that if you're interested in joining the conversation or listening in. Yeah. Any other questions for Casey? If we don't have any other questions, then I would like to move on to the guild system intro by Subsim. Subsim, are you here?
Hello.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Let me share my screen.
Of course.
Right, can everyone see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm excited to present my primitive that I'm working on for Matchbox DAO, which is game guilds or a guild system. So this is, firstly, this presentation is not very comprehensive in the use cases. It's mainly just looking at it from a concept perspective, and the concept that I've come up with for implementing guilds for games on Starknet. So we start with a mission statement. So the mission is to create a shared account for game items between players. I want to develop this as much as a blank canvas as possible. So it allows games to easily build on top of it and to develop their own, or for us to develop easy plugins for them. I want to standardize a base role system for managing permissions, and this comes more. I'll explain why this is more important later on. want to develop a certificate system across all of the guilds and games to monitor member status and ownership, create a gamified UI for easy member interaction and management. And finally, want to onboard ICAR or Age of ICAR as a test case for measuring the success of the guild system. So I'm going to jump straight into an architecture picture here to get more of a familiarity of what I'm building. So the top diagram here shows a guild master creating or deploying a guild contract. They then store a member permissions which members are allowed to call. So this is contract addresses, selectors, or call data. And then the master can whitelist, or someone of a similar seniority can whitelist members to join, or owners to join, and they can mint themselves a guild certificate. This certificate stores information such as the role, and if they are the role of owner, it will show the tokens that they own within that guild. So then on the bottom diagram, we can see the guild, and if you look at this from an anti-clockwise perspective, starting on owner A on the left, you can see that they deposit item A, and that information is stored in their guild certificate. So this example is just a sword in ICAR. If they then wanted to withdraw that item, they can, because that information is stored in their certificate. Then if you have owner B that has a different item that they've deposited, they cannot withdraw item A because they don't have a certificate that matches that information. However, if they wanted to withdraw item B that they have, they can. And then finally on the right, we have a member, just call them member A. And if you look at the member permissions that this guild is allowed to call. So they're allowed to call the ICAR battle contract, the selector battle function, and no exceptions on the call data. So member A can use owner A's item A that they deposited to battle with his sword. However, they can't use the item B deposited by owner B, the armor, because they want to make a trade with it, and that's not within the member permissions. So building on top of that, just a quick glance at some pseudocode. So I'll just go over this quickly. So we've got function join. This will check the caller has been whitelisted, and will mint we'll call the certificate contract to mint them a certificate with that given role that was whitelisted. We have a deposit function. So firstly, the certificate must have the role of owner to be able to deposit, and it will store the token info of that owner into the certificate of those parameters of token ID, and amount, and it will transfer in the token. Then same parameters as above, withdraw. This will check the caller's certificate has the token info, and it will then update the certificate and transfer out the token. Set permission. This will be called to set or store the contract or selector that members can call. It will check the caller is a master or similar seniority. And just a side caveat for this, and I'll explain later, they can only be called once or reset by a governance vote through all owners. And finally, we have an execute transaction, which is very similar to an account execute function. You can basically call this with any call that you want to make, but it will check firstly that the person calling holds the certificate for this guild and checks that the call is a permissioned one. And then if that's all okay, it will execute that transaction. So a bit more detail into what the concept is here, which is permissioned calls. So account abstraction is great, and it's opened the door for a lot of innovation, including multi-ownership accounts. However, when I've decided upon this guild, I want to require that it's multi-ownership, but it prevents bad actors from exploiting that ownership right. So what I'm saying is basically, we want people to have some sort of ownership of the tokens, but we don't want them to be able to steal them, burn them, or do anything they want. So transactions made from the guild are reverted unless authorized from a permission list up to the permission setter to ensure that there are no complications. So for example, we don't want tokens to be locked for long periods, and we don't want people to steal them, transfer them out. set permissions needs to be agreed by all owners. So further on to the governance thing I was mentioning, after the initial setup, it will need to be agreed by all owners through a governance vote that the permissions are changing, because they are in the certificate the owners of those. And the owners who vote against the change in permissions, they need to be given a period of time to withdraw before that permission is set. And then finally, owners who added items to the guild can withdraw them, which I explained mostly before. So a quick look at some of the capabilities, which it's not a comprehensive list, but we can have guild level game operations instead of just on account level. With this certificate system, you have a certificate that provides you liquidity to a guild, to an entrance to the guild, and the items that you hold within it. We could implement tax systems for members. So members pay tax, and that goes, for example, towards a treasury to expand the items within that guild, or for another use case, whatever the game or guild wants to do with those funds. And finally, guild recommendations. So we can recommend guilds based on your account activity in games. So some issues to flag with this approach. So keeping track of who owns what in the certificates requires storage. And that can be expensive. There might be some things we can do in terms of hashing, which Darknet allows us to do. But for this permission list, really, for this concept, we need to store some of that data on chain. The caller who's making these game interactions is the guild contract and not the account. So, for example, if there was a benefit of getting, for example, experience points from interacting with the game contract, that will go to the guild account. And again, we could work with games to potentially build that in, where we feed in as well a parameter of the account that used the guild to make the call. But also we can look into other methods. Members can transfer their certificate to each other. Need to look into whether this is a bad situation or not. And finally, owners must verify before they add add tokens or game items, that the member permissions within that guild are suitable. So just a quick look at the potential, the UI that we have. So this has mainly been developed so far by ICAR, or the people at ICAR. Really just wanted to show this because it shows we want to make this UI simplistic, but also gamified. And I think this is a great version to have as a starting version, at least. Some further ideas to add. Restriction on items added into the guild, so whoever is permissioning that guild can restrict items. At the moment, it's just completely open. We could have automated member management. So, for example, if you had data points that you wanted to track on game activity, keeper functions could make sure members are keeping to those, or if they fall below, administrate the guild. Of course, cross-chain availability, so having, for example, Ethereum making the most out of these guilds. And finally, customizable metadata for certificates. So similar to like your Uniswap v3 positions, you can have a nice image for your guild certificate depending on whatever guild you're in and different properties. And that's everything. So as important as it is for me to develop this and have the ideas, it's also greatly important to have feedback. So yeah, I've posted the Matchbox channel, the Discord, and I'm soon to post some updates this week, and then I'll put it on the channel, but the GitHub. Yeah, just let me know what you think of this approach, and what you would like in your specific games to have and benefit from these guilds. I would just say as well that there are other approaches that I've looked at. So, for example, you could look at multi-sig, you could look at just a full governance system, you could look at just having the account abstraction with multiple people. But I think this so far is the most suitable thing that I've come up with. Just stepping back and thinking, what really would you want to see these guilds, and how would you make them permissionless and scalable? So yeah, that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your presentation. Super interesting stuff. Do we have any feedback, any questions, any remarks? Don't be shy. One thing that I found interesting was the point of onboarding L1 games potentially. Does that mean that you would put this on L1 as well, or do you mean bridging the tokens to L2 and then making use of that on Starknet?
I mean, it's definitely a research topic that I need to look more into, but I know there would certainly be capabilities. For example, potential for, well, as you said, bringing L1 items into this guild system, which is on L2, or and then reusing them back into L1. So just that sort of bridge between on Ethereum, everyone has their own account and you can't share. Now being able to share on Starknet. So I think that's the main idea I'm looking at there, and it was just research to see what's possible.
Yeah, that would be really cool. But definitely an active research topic for sure. I mean, I can definitely see this being used, for example, in O-game, right? In O-game, you have these different. I don't actually know if they're called guilds or different fleets or whatever, but definitely could be super interesting in O-game. You could share resources or ships and so on and so forth. Could be really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I stress the point of feedback. So working with iCar, they have their own ideas about what they want. And it's really, I want to keep this as plain as possible so that anyone can come in and build whatever they want with it. So just having those ideas and keeping it open and flexible is the aim. But yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I'd be happy to put you in touch with the O-game guys. I mean,
Cool.
this could also be potentially used in the chess game. If you play like DAO versus DAO chess and there are rewards or something.
That's the thing, and one thing I did forget to mention is I've mainly talked about the share of game items, but even if you can interact with game contracts that don't actually require you to have items as well, and it's more you're then as a association, as a guild association, you can make game decisions as part of that guild together. So yeah, and the range of capabilities of games, or should I say, the range of use cases that games have, like chess to battles to whatever, is vast. So yeah, it's just about keeping it flexible.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the right approach to keep things flexible, especially in this kind of area where every day some things change, something new can be done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do we have any more questions or remarks about the guild system?
Yeah, just gonna say, really looking forward to seeing this project progress. Whenever I think of guilds, I sort of transpose that onto bands and the sort of like inner band functions and governance things that happen in that kind of space. So it's interesting to hear the sort of abstraction you've created here, and I'm still just kind of wrapping my head around how that can relate to people collaborating on music and things like that. So looking forward to it.
Definitely, yeah. And yeah, it'd be great if you had any ideas. Just reach out to me on the channel. And we can collab.
Right on.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually a big part of the conversation happens in the specific channels, right? Where people have some more time to think about stuff and go through it and then come back with feedback. So definitely go share your thoughts on that in the channel. And yeah, that's it for today. Bit of a shorter call, 45 minutes, but that's fine. Doesn't have to be 1 hour plus every time. Thank you guys so much for presenting. It's been a pleasure as always. And definitely make sure to tune into the Twitter space we have right now. In 15 minutes, we're going to have a Twitter space about machine learning. And Fran from the Giza project, which is also a Matchbox community, is going to be there. Secretive is going to host it, and we have 2 other guests who are deep into machine learning and AI. And so if this is something that interests you, definitely check it out on the Matchbox DAO Twitter account. Starts in 15 minutes, exactly 15 minutes from now. And yeah, thank you guys for attending, and see you guys next week.